Welcome back, everyone, to Bumping and Thumping, your podcast featuring everything about foreign independent wrestling from around the world. And this guest today, he's going to put the amazing in the episode. His career began in 1996, hailing from the esteemed Can-Am Wrestling Academy. This guest today, he's rubbed elbows with all kinds of greatness, wrestlers who have ventured all over the world. You can find him as one of the pillars of the Canadian World Order at Insane Wrestling Revolution. He is a tenured veteran featured at Border City Wrestling. And not only is amazing, just discuss his entire resume, but so is the knowledge that he's just so willing to share with everyone. And that's one of my favorite things about this guest today. So after we return from a word with our sponsors, we will return with our guest, the amazing Nate with an 8, Mattson. We will be right back. For coming on, and before we get into everything I have planned for you, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. You know, I've had a couple matches this past weekend, so I'm still a little recovering from that. But other than that, it's just the same old thing. Just working out and trying to keep the juices flowing.
Absolutely. I mean, every waking moment, every breath that I have, like, it is devoted for doing that, keeping the wheel turning. And, as exhausting and as it can be, like, it's always worth it. It's always just the things that we get to do as performers and the people we get to meet, the things that we get to experience. If it wasn't for wrestling, like, I just find that so amazing. So do you get to do a lot of podcasts? Do you find the time to?
Yeah, I mean, I welcome all podcasts, but
yeah, for sure.
It's been a minute since I've done one. I think I did one probably maybe 3 or 4 months ago for an Ohio group.
Okay, so how did your love for professional wrestling begin, even before you stepped between the ropes?
So longtime fan. Probably started watching it probably like 85, 86 as a little kid, and then but by the time I was 10. Around 87, WrestleMania 3 was here in Detroit.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hype and buzz locally, newspapers and advertisements, things like that. So that caught my eye, and just, got to, they started the Saturday morning wrestling, because that started in the 80s. So every Saturday morning I'd sit down on my rug and with a bowl of cereal and, wrestling and Pee-wee's Playhouse and G.I. Joe and all that. So I loved it since I was a kid. It's just something grabbed me.
Right.
Most notably, Macho Man. He was my guy.
Yeah. So. And that leads me into my next question. Do you have a specific core memory that, like, was the sign for you that, like, oh my God, I need to do this. I need to do this myself.
Well, so that came a little later. When I was in high school, in the 90s, there was only very few independent wrestling promotions. DBA.
Yeah, absolutely.
His father was Sweet Daddy Malcolm Monroe.
Yeah.
And he was a promoter, and he had Midwest Championship Wrestling and Insane Championship Wrestling. And they would run at the Inkster High School. So sometimes I would go to those. But how I found independent wrestling was I was watching my Saturday morning wrestling, and a really low budget commercial came on, and it featured this tag team called the International Freedom Fighters, and it was Muhammad Jihad Saad and Chris Carter, who I still see. He works for Rude Boy for the International Big Time Wrestling.
Cool.
When I saw this commercial, I was just drawn to it, like, wait, and it was in Taylor, and I was like, it was called Midwest Territorial Wrestling.
Yeah.
It was promoted by Gary Warrenchak, who is in Dearborn. He's all over the political scene. He's done many things in Detroit. And so I just was drawn to it. And I got to see a lot of the the mentors that I would eventually have wrestle on these shows, like Scott D'Amore, Irish Mickey Doyle, people like that. So I would come every month to Taylor, I think it was like some recreation center, and just started getting to know the wrestlers. And there was this one match, and this guy came out, and he wasn't much bigger than I was in high school. And, you know, I was like, man, if this guy could do it, I could do it. So I just started that, feeling of, this could happen, because if this can happen this close to home, there's got to be a way to get in. That was the hard part of getting in, because there wasn't many schools back then.
And like, I actually have a question about that. So in today's world, you can Google a wrestling school, and then you can jump into someone's DM and be like, hey, I'm a wrestler. And like, just the door is so, it's almost so ridiculous how easy it is. So what was it like when you were first breaking in?
So it was very hard. You had to know somebody, because I was working midnights at Kmart, and just so I was the Monday Night War. It was just starting. It was 95. They were.
Oh, so right in the height.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd go in, and before my shift started, I would watch Nitro or Raw or whatever.
No way. Yeah.
And so the manager came in to me one day. He's like, why are you watching this fake stuff? And I said, oh, I want to be a wrestler one day. And he said, you're too small, because this was still, guys were still big. The cruiserweights were just starting to get TV. Wasn't commonplace at that time. So most wrestlers were, over 200 pounds and 6 foot something.
Yeah.
So this went on for weeks. He'd see me watching wrestling, and you're never gonna make it. So
are you that personality? Like, when someone like says something like that to you, it makes you even more deliberate?
I mean, it didn't bother me, because I was still trying to figure it out. So I had saw this ad in a wrestling magazine it said inside secrets on how you can enter professional wrestling. And it was a little booklet, and it was made by Paul Bearer. He wrote it in the 80s and 90s.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it was like, guys from my generation, that's how we found out about wrestling schools, because we mailed away for this little booklet. And it's pretty funny when I find people that have this booklet, and years later I had Paul Bearer sign it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, that sounds like something like you see in a movie, like this underground society, like the rest of the world doesn't know exists, and it exists in parallel with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when I was going through the book, there was a school, the closest one to Michigan was Al Snow's. He was in Lima, Ohio. It was called Body Slammers Gym. And so I sent away for an application. I mean, it was a big deal. You had to to make sure you were healthy enough and all this type of stuff. But I still have the application. But what happened was that manager at my Kmart, he goes, you're serious about this? I said, yeah, I'm going to go to this school in Ohio. He's like, well, come with me. So he takes me into his office, and there's all these pictures of George the Animal Steel and like local wrestlers. And so he's messing with me this whole time, and that's just kind of how it was back then. Like,
oh, okay.
They don't really let marks. You don't let marks in the business. You've got to really play it. And so he was a local promoter, but he didn't do anything big. He just did most of the fundraisers. But he had met and networked a lot of these wrestlers. So he introduced me to a guy named Iron Mike Anthony, who doesn't wrestle anymore.
Yeah.
But he was wrestling locally, and a lot of the old timers knew him. So I met him. He goes, I call him up. He's like, bring $300 and meet me at this Burger King in East Point.
Yeah.
So I'm just out of high school, so I don't have $300. So I have my mom, and I'm thinking, I say, Mom, can you write me a check, $300? So I get the check, and I meet him at Burger King. We have like a little, meal, whatever, and we talk. And so I pull out the money, and he goes, a check? He goes, if this check bounces, so will you. And that's my favorite line, because, here he's thinking like, what is this, And on the other foot, it's like, I'm giving this guy money. I don't even know what I'm doing,
Right.
So he hands me over and this is the best thing. This is the best money you could buy. This $300 because he gave me Irish Mickey Doyle's phone number, and so that was it. We parted ways. I basically paid $300 for a phone number, but it's Mickey's phone number. So that's how I got my foot in the door.
So for people who don't know, when they hear the name Mickey Doyle, what should they know?
Okay, so Irish Mickey Doyle was 1970 NWA Rookie of the Year. His very first match, he wrestled Classy Freddie Blassie. He went on to wrestle the Sheik, obviously, in Detroit multiple times. He wrestled Luthez. He teamed with Bruno Sammartino, and even Bruno took him to Japan, where he wrestled Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta.
Yeah.
So, and then he wrestled in all these territories and spent 10 years in California wrestling, and then came back here to where his family is, and then he helped Scott D'Amore open Can-Am Wrestling School. So, wow. Yeah, so that's where like the respect and is you have somebody that paved the way, and now he's passing down the knowledge to me. So when I called him up, he was the nicest guy. He's still the nicest guy to the day. He just moved back to Michigan.
Yeah.
And I'll take him to shows sometimes with me. But he called me up, or I called him, and he said, "You got some knee pads coming over to Windsor?" And we hit it off like we were old friends. And so to this, he's my wrestling dad, and he taught me so much about everything about the business. So same with Scott D'Amore, and another gentleman who has a move named after him, the Canadian Destroyer, who was an actual living person, and but he passed away in the year 2000. So he was my other trainer, and so the reason why he was named, the move was named after him, was out of respect, because he trained a lot of the guys in the 90s. So.
One thing I absolutely love about our conversation so far, Nate, is just hearing your words from your story. You hold just such a deep honor to be able to do and perform and be the places where you've been. And I know one of your greatest intents is just giving that back to people and being an example of that. And that's one thing I really appreciate about you. What about the wrestling business to you is so sacred? What about it? Why do you hold such a deep reverence for it? How do you relate on that level?
Well, thank you for that.
Absolutely. It's true. It's so true.
Like, wrestling is it's a weird subculture. It's everybody is welcome here, but you have to pay your dues. It's where all the freaks and misfits kind of end up.
It's like punk, right?
Yeah, it is. And you find your people here, and not everyone's going to get along, but one of the first things about wrestling is you learn quickly that it's a small business. Like, if a younger wrestler, tries to, make up a story or tell a lie or something, it can easily be debunked, fact checked by calling, "Hey, this kid said you trained him," and no, I don't know this kid. So it's like, we're very tight knit as far as our connections run very deep. So all over the world, I know wrestlers all over the world. So I can, if somebody name drop somebody, we have to trust each other. Trust is the number one thing. So once you earn the trust of the veterans and your peers, which we call the boys, just because you become a wrestler, and this counts for girls too. Girls can be the boys, It's just, the grouping of
absolutely
when you finally are accepted as one of the boys. That's a special club. And not every wrestler gets to be one of the boys. It's one of those things where it's like, you have to pay your dues. We have to see that you respect the business and that we can trust you with the business has been exposed, but it hasn't really. Mm-hmm. Fans only know what we allow them to know.
Absolutely.
So we can still work the fans and they might think that they know what's going on, but that's the beauty of what we do is like we still get them, you know.
Right.
So that's where the respect factor and the trust factor, that's what's sacred, you know.
Absolutely.
Protecting each other in the ring, like we're not there to hurt each other, you know. We're there to make sure we make money,
right,
and then the fans are entertained, and you know we can come back next time and hopefully have a bigger house and
right.
make money and have better matches. So, and that's the goal.
And you know, I think that's an excellent thought. But we have to take a break, and when we return, we will be right back with the amazing Nate Mattson.
The secret to building passive income and generating wealth in real estate is having access to capital to buy those great deals when they come along. One thing most real estate moguls have going for them is knowing how to utilize private funding and where to find it. For those that don't, there's tsquarelending.com. We provide real estate investors of all levels and experience with the means to acquire the funding they need to purchase and renovate, purchase and hold, or refinance properties that they currently own. How? By connecting them with private lenders that base their approval on the appraisal value of the property only, not a credit score. Our lenders feature interest-only loans, approval for a loan in 24 hours or less, no debt-to-income ratios, refi properties after only 60 days of seasoning. Don't delay. Call today. 877-49-LOANS, 877-495-6267, or visit us on the web, www.t-squarelending.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Bumping and Thumping, your podcast featuring everything about foreign independent wrestling from around the world. I'm Annie, and our guest today is the amazing Nate Mattson. Nate, before the break, you brought up an excellent point about paying dues. So, do you believe that dues ever stop being paid, and what do you mean exactly when you say pay dues?
So, paying dues is when you've earned the right to have an opinion. I mean, it's like anything. It's like the military. It's there's certain levels. When you start out, you know, we always tell guys, you know, if you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't want to sound stupid. You don't want to sound like you're egotistical or obnoxious. And some people, they'll try to kind of, you know, joke around a little bit just to try to get over and become boys. But it's like, it's best to kind of like just stay quiet and just take it all in. Be a sponge, you know, and we want to see you grow. Like, we want to see these young guys come out of the House of Truth, Skull and Bones, Can-Am. We want to see these guys mature, and it takes years. It takes years and years because learning psychology, learning how to work the crowd, learning how long to sell something, when to fight back. Like, there's so many little, tiny little things that you have to learn and then store in your memory banks. Like, and then listening to the people. Like, are they buying this? Are they into this? What should I do here? And then you have to kind of show that you are learning and paying attention to everything that's going on. Like, so for instance, like, say I wrestle a young guy and maybe he gets nervous, he doesn't listen, he starts doing stuff that, you know, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Chill out, settle down, relax, we're good. And then if he kind of starts doing his own thing and he's not listening, then it's like, I'll get to the back and I'll sit him down and be like, look, I've been doing this a long time. I'm not going to make anybody look stupid. I want this out, because if you look stupid, then I look stupid. So the whole point is, if we get the match over, and then we both get over. That's the simplest way to put it. So if you listen, and if you slow down, and if you kind of check your ego, and then learn how this process works, because it is a process. You have to kind of be a young boy. You have to kind of tear down the ring. Like, in the old days, it was harder to get in the wrestling business. Like, and out of respect, I'll still do this. But like for a Mickey Doyle, we brought up, if he has a couple bags, I'm carrying those bags for him. No questions asked, because out of respect, you know, he's had shoulder surgeries, knee surgeries, everything. So it's like, I'm going to help him as much as possible. In the old days, there were stories of young wrestlers having to tie old timers boots because they couldn't bend over. You know, out of respect, you would carry their bags, tie their boots, take them to the airport, pick them up. And that's just because they gave so much to the business. So when you can show that kind of respect, and then you earn that respect, that's how you pay dues. You know, if you just show up just to wrestle, it's not really going to do you any favors, because everybody is watching. You know, like, you might not think it, you're watching, like, and I tell this to people, Scott D'Amore could be on his phone 10 feet away from you.
And he's still listening.
He's watching everybody. He's just intuitive, because he's making sure that, you know, you're not being disrespectful. You are, you know, doing your job properly. You're there on time. You got a good attitude. You work hard. And that's really what it's all about. It's a team effort. But if we see that you're kind of like not wanting to be part of the team, that can take opportunities away from you, and that can you know, stall your career just because you thought it was just about, you know, oh, look what I can do, and showing off. And it's like, no, it's like a job. You have a promoter telling you this is what we need from you. If you do it to your best of your ability, over. If you listen to the veterans, they're going to put you over, and everybody wins. So paying dues is critical, and you really don't stop paying dues, because the higher you climb on the ladder, you know, like, you have to prove yourself all over again each time you move up. So
see, I even from where you are at the stage of the game, like, you are paying dues in the fact that you are bringing up people up to the level that you are. You're right. I don't think you ever stop paying dues, because when you give of yourself, it finds you. And like you said, people are always watching. People are always listening. Which brings me to my next question, actually. Like, what habits do you see that are common, like, for people just beginning in their careers, that might actually close the doors to opportunities before they even get through the threshold?
Just proper communication, and you know, like, say you email a promoter, and you know, you're really wanting to get on their show. Maybe they have some buzz around their promotion. Like, you know, like, I talk to, you know, all the promoters, you know, and so they'll say, hey, can you believe what this kid sent to me? You know, like, hey, book me. Hey, my rate is this. And it's like, that's not how it works. You know, like, you know, you send out, hey, you don't even say, hey, say, you know, good afternoon, so-and-so. Keep it as professional as you can. It's like going to a job interview. You know, like, wrestling is no different. You know, and then as you get to know these people, then you can loosen up, and the mood changes a little bit. But at first, you want to be as professional as possible. If you start, you know, saying weird stuff like, you know, hey, I don't do this, and, you know, my character wouldn't do that. It's like, you're brand new. You don't have a character. You know, you kind of, like, that'll mold, and we'll sharpen that as it comes. But right now, it's like, don't get ahead of the cart, you know.
I mean, like, especially like a person who still doesn't know their own self-identity. How do you know what your character would feel and think if you don't even know who you are yourself?
Right.
I think that's so interesting. So,
and that's the thing, is like, they people in their heads will come up with, like, this scenario. It's like a video game, you know, like career mode. You know, they see themselves already main eventing WrestleMania, and it's like, you know, I'm sorry, but you have to learn how to lose before you can win. Because you need to understand that emotion.
Right.
Wrestling is emotion.
It is.
What we're trying to sell people is not really moves. It's a drama. It's a physical drama. Of, you know, generally good guy versus bad guy, but, you know, there's so many more layers to it. You know, there's personal issues, and how does that make you feel, and how would you react if this was real? It's very much, it's acting, it's theater, it's Shakespeare.
Can you talk about what your process was when going through this yourself?
So for years, this is a great example, because for years I was a baby face. You know, just, you know, and I don't know if you've seen me work, but I'm mostly a heel nowadays.
I don't know if I've ever seen you as a baby face.
Yeah. So, but I love being a baby face.
Sure.
As you get older, you might, in the old days, and it still stands true today, the heel leads the match.
Mm-hmm.
The heel is driving the bus. The heel is the one who dictates everything because the baby face has to react to the heel.
Right.
Because the heel is going to do something dastardly or despicable, and the fans are going to react. And the babyface, he has to stand up to the heel. He has to jump over that hurdle, that obstacle, and he has to win at all costs. The heel is just there to disrupt, cause mayhem, do whatever he needs to, and he don't care how he wins. Sometimes he doesn't care about winning. He just wants to kill people. But when I started out, I was a babyface, and then along came Chris Sabin. Darn that Chris Sabin. So Chris Sabin was 18 years old when I met him. And he was such a naturally gifted athlete and he's been a heel here and there, but like he's so likable. His personality, very likable guy. So he was an instant babyface. And I trained him. He came to our NWA Michigan school. We had a school in Romulus. And the trainer that was there was really lazy. And so I would come in and I'd help these young guys. I'd teach them how to wrestle and all this. And I saw something in Chris Sabin very early, and which eventually I brought him over to Can-Am because I knew Scott could do a lot of work with him.
What about him stood out to you? What was that thing that you saw?
Just a great attitude, a positive attitude. Like he wanted to learn. And he showed up. He never took time off. He was there every time. He worked hard every time. So, and then I watched him improve. And I think that's where kind of like I got spoiled because every student after him, you can't compare because he was so head and shoulders above everybody else. And now when new people get into the business, and I'm like, well, there's no Chris Sabin, but
yeah, right. Chris Sabin is Chris Sabin. I get it.
And now, he's been in the business a long time, over 20 years. So he just came along at a great time, and I was able to kind of open some doors for him. But because he was such a natural babyface, and I needed an opponent, we naturally just like had good matches. And I wrestled him dozens and dozens of times all over the country, and even in Canada. And so when it was just a natural thing for me to turn heel. And I had about 5 years experience before he came along. And so I knew how to be a heel because I was getting the crap kicked out of me by all the old heels. The old timers, that's how it was. I was a 19-year-old kid and I would wrestle all these guys in their 30s and 40s, and they see fresh meat, I'm getting pounded, backdrop, through the roof. And, but I learned respect and I got over with them. And so then they could trust me to have good matches. And then finally promoters would put me with younger guys starting out and help them go learn that way. So that's how I learned. And then that's a personal issue. Like, oh, Chris Sabin, you're on the scene now. I taught you everything blah, blah, blah. And so it's kind of like a natural rivalry. So then I just then doors opened for me as a kid. And then along came Jimmy Jacobs and then Petey Williams and Zach Gowen, Truth Martini, all these guys that are Michigan legends, we all traveled the roads together. We went everywhere together, all over the Midwest, everywhere. Through Brian Gorey, DBA, Briar Wellington, like there's decades, all of us, we faced everybody that came to Detroit, from AJ Styles and, Nigel McGuinness and Seth Rollins and Johnny Gargano and everybody like that. Those we got to wrestle all these guys, boom, before they made it big. And it was just cool because it was a great time in the business. And, and that's how you learn. You just take every experience and then that molds you into who you are. So.
And I just think that's awesome. Like when you show appreciation for what people give you, you get more of it. And I think the words humble really gets a bad rap. I feel like just people on a subconscious level just try and resist it. Like, uh, right, we have to take a break really quickly, but in a short like summation, what does humility look like to you in the context of business and the professional wrestling business?
And it's a little bit what I touched on earlier. It's
Yeah.
just showing that respect to the people that paved the way, and seeing what they gave with their bodies and their time, because they don't have to. A veteran doesn't have to help you, but we're taught to leave the business better than you found it, and we're taught to protect the business and make it a place where we can learn and we can grow and we can ultimately do what we love, and that's entertain the people and make some money on as we're doing it. So the humility is just being grateful for the opportunity to even be in a locker room, a wrestling school, a ring, because that is a sacred, all those are sacred areas.
And I feel like when you act like you know everything, you actually limit yourself to all of the things you can learn. And it's just something as simple as the silly baby ego gets in the way. So
Absolutely. I mean, wrestling is full of ego. It's an ego-driven business, because if we didn't have that inner ego to kind of push us, a lot of us wouldn't come out of that shell. But you do. It's where you have to check your ego, and you have to kind of like when you come back through that curtain, like I can go out there and I can be the biggest jerk, arrogant, but when I come back through the curtain, it's like, wow, that was great. Thank everybody. Thank the referee. Thank your opponent. Thank the timekeeper. Thank the announcer. Thank the ring crew, because all of that machine made it possible for you to do that. And it's every match is special.
Absolutely.
And at my age, every match could be my last match. So I don't know. I want it to keep going as long as I can. So I'm very grateful for everything that I get.
And Nate, I'm grateful for your presence on the podcast today. Like, this has been just an educating experience on the whole, entertaining, just like, thank you. So we will be right back after a word from our sponsors with Nate Mattson.
Hi, I'm Jay Aubrey Jackson, the $50 computer virus guy in Metro Detroit. We are the home of the true flat $50 computer repair. $50 job no matter how long it takes. Never a penny more. Netbooks, laptops, desktop towers, all-in-one computers, phones, iPhones, tablets, iPads, and game systems. Free diagnosis and money-back guarantee. If we don't fix it, you pay nothing. And we do same-day service within 24 hours of drop-off. And are open 7 days a week, so come to the computer virus guy now.
Welcome back to our final segment of Bumping and Thumping, your podcast featuring everything about foreign independent wrestling from around the world. Nate, everything you've said has just been everything I think the world needs to hear. It's critical and imperative at this point in time. So earlier you mentioned a bunch of Michigan legends by your words, but I think maybe but I will allow myself the opportunity to say for you that your name should be thrown in the mix there. I don't know. You might be too humble to say, but I'm not. I know greatness when I see it. So you've mentioned the legacies of amazing names that you mentioned earlier. But what kind of legacy do you think you've left in professional wrestling? And what do you want to leave behind you?
Wow. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
It's weird because it's like I don't try to think about that, like, because like on the independents, you meet everybody. I have been so blessed to share the ring, the locker room, car rides, hotel rooms, like with like a laundry list of like a who's who in this business. And like when I think of people like Sabu, when I think of Rhino, like those are like two of my mentors, along with Mickey Doyle, Scott D'Amore, Kane Destroyer. Just being around them, kind of like hearing the way that they discuss business, the way they put their matches together, the way they treat each other. Like I said, this is land of misfits, you know, like we all belong, but like we have to fight for it. And once you fight for it, you know, I just hope that people see the work that I put into it. And even if they don't, I know that I did the work, and I tried to follow the rules to a point where, like, even as the business changes, the business does change, but the fundamentals are still there, you know, protecting each other, protecting the business, respecting one another, trying to just get along. One of my mottos is like, just be cool with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people like to cause drama, and they like to like just kind of, you know, start crap and stir the pot. And it's like, I'm here for a good time. I'm here to entertain the people. And most of the times I'm in the match, I'm popping myself.
Yeah.
Just doing
What's
stuff.
the point? That's the entire point.
You know, and so
yeah,
if you once you learn to have fun, like, and I'm, you know, this is not like, I don't want to brag. I'm, you know,
please brag.
Last year I was at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
I got thrown out of the ring by Ronda Rousey.
That's awesome.
So I think it was like 60,000, maybe less. I don't know. I you know, I'm gonna pump it up. Who knows? But I had to, you know, me and my buddy Jeff Bundy. He's a great referee. He ref my match at Evolve. Yeah. But longtime friend. But we got paired up together to do that spot, and it was really cool, and it was super easy. But that was like the calmest I've ever been in my life. And here I am going on SummerSlam, a pay-per-view. Yeah. I'm going in the ring to check on Shayna Baszler, and then Ronda Rousey grabs us, throws us across the ring, and like, I'm completely cool as a cucumber. And that's only because I've been doing this. Like, this November will be 28 years.
Incredible.
So, and it's not that I don't get nervous anymore.
Sure.
It's like, if because I've done it so much.
Is it like second nature?
It is. It is second nature, and it's just something that it's ingrained in me at this point. So you can put me in front of you know, thousands of people.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't want to mess up, and I don't want to screw anything up, but I'm confident in my abilities, and I'm confident in how I'm going to react to something. I kind of, that timing and like kind of like that, just my body language, like I kind of like that all comes second nature now. And that's the thing with wrestling, is it just takes that time. So the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. And like you said, the more you appreciate and the more gratitude you have, good things do happen, because people will see you're reliable, you're dependable, and you have a good attitude. And that's really, if I could just pass that on to guys, it's like, if you show up, do your job, do your best, don't complain. If somebody messes up in a match, pull them to the side and say, hey, that sucked, but let's try not to make that mistake again, you know, and learn from it. And because I know I've messed up in matches, and there's things that you'll forget, but
you have to own it.
Yeah.
Own
it, and then learn from it.
Yeah.
And you know, try to do things where you can cover up your mistakes to where only the other wrestlers will notice.
Sure.
Don't kind of, you know, freak out in the match, and you know, that a professional just keeps going. You know, our job is just, let's get to the finish line, and let's keep these people, you know, enthralled. Let's suspend their disbelief and not expose anything that we shouldn't. So.
And you know what? After I'm fortunate enough to be on a show with you, you're the first person I seek out. Like, that's because I see I want to know what Nate Mattson sees from his corner of the world and how it can make me better. But that's what it's all about, for me, at least. And so before we get out of here, Nate, what is coming up for you? How can fans connect with you? And people have a way to get their hands on your merch.
Yep. So I think I'm off next weekend, but I'm October 5th, MPWA in the fairgrounds in Saline, I believe. Not sure what I'm doing yet. Then there's some other big shows like Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling over in Windsor. I'll be backstage, you know, helping out. So, you know, that's going to be a big deal with Scott D'Amour's new promotion that he's running over there at the St. Clair College. And so just my socials, most of them end with @AmazingNate, AMAZINGN #8, like the tat. So, and I got this when I was 18, and I drew it, and I've spelled it like this because I was a skateboarder growing up.
Right.
So we skate or die, and so I spelled it. So I still skate every once in a while. But so at Amazing Nate, and then YouTube is N8 Mattson, and then Pro Wrestling Tees, N8 Mattson. I got a few shirts on there. Sons of Michigan, The Threat, my Nate with the kind of like a Route 66 logo. So yeah, it's just got a few things up there, and pretty much it for now.
For now. Nate, thank you again for your time. This has been awesome. It's been awesome sitting under your learning tree, and I appreciate it greatly. I'd like to thank our friends at Trailways Transports for what they do to make our show possible, our crew that is behind the scenes for what they do, and we will catch you next time for another episode of Bumpin' and Thumping, your podcast featuring everything about foreign independent wrestling from around the world. I'm Annie. We'll catch you later.
Look at the power of the future Chris Sabin.
Whoop. And the quickness into Nate Mattson. There's another deep arm drag. Deep arm drag of his own from Sabin. And another one from Mattson. Another one from Sabin, just trading arm drags here. And now it's becoming, a little shoving and slapping match here. Well, Nate Mattson's not going to back down from Chris Sabin.
And he is protected by that champion's edge. He can use that closed fist here. Because as we mentioned at the start of this match, a disqualification.
Oh, look at that. Flying body press right over the top rope and just pummeling Chris Sabin.
There was a closed fist again, but he's protected by that champion's edge. A disqualification works in Nate Mattson's favor tonight.
Nate Mattson has to make sure that...
And attacking Alexander Kane.
Yeah, he has to make sure that he does not allow Kane to get to his head. Kane he's a master of manipulation out there.
Oh, we've been watching those promos for 3 weeks here on Rampage, Dad. And we know that Alexander Kane is in Nate Mattson's head.
Rolls him up. Gets a count of 2, but Sabin kicks right out before the bridge could be applied. Mattson thought he had a 3 count there. I don't blame him if he wants to put away Sabin quickly.
Well, obviously, both men would like to end this match
gut
quickly.
wrench suplex.
Just because of the